We finally made it to a real Northwoods winter day. Today on the show, to learn about local legend Robert Loveless. Welcome back to Up North at 4. We are continuing our local legends series this February, and we're heading up to Manitowish Waters to talk to Jim Bokern about Robert Loveless. So Jim, tell us about Robert.
Robert was one of the earliest pioneers to Manitowish Waters, and he came here as a young man, first entering into the area around South Trout Lake, where a man was running his resort and cottages, and he worked in logging camps and did some market lake trout fishing and alike. One of the best early stories of him under the man's camp was that he was sent to Woodruff on a wagon in the winter to get food for the logging camp. And he and a friend were followed by wolves, and they ended up throwing part of the meat and food off of their wagon into the woods to distract the wolves so they could get back to Trout Lake safely. His adventures moved rather quickly in a different direction. Around 1897 to 1898, he was identified by some fishing enthusiasts, Richard Southgate and Marvin Hewitt, as a very capable and reliable man. And they immediately hired Robert Loveless to take care of a growing venture of creating a unique fishing paradise on Little Trout Lake that would be connected from the Northwestern Railroad in Lac du Flambeau to Little Trout Lake and the Manitowish Waters chain by a unique series of canals. That canal system will create an isolated area with extraordinary fishing. And Southgate, who was quite wealthy for his work in the Congress Hotel, Marvin Hewitt was the number 2 man at the Chicago Northwestern Railroad. They brought all sorts of finery to their retreat. Cases of French champagne, barrels of live lobster would be brought from the trains, hauled through the canals, and then that would be part of the parties that would be operating on Little Trout Lake. Loveless started buying land about 1908 to 1910 on Alder Lake, and he created his own entrepreneur ventures there that were really quite extraordinary. And then we really started to see all the different things that he could do. He was a musician. He was a tightrope walker. He'll ultimately develop zoos. He'll be a barkeeper, a moonshiner. He will build and operate a massive pavilion that hundreds of people will attend. And all of this is going to be done on his properties. He'll move his tavern and bar 3 times over the course of his life. And the bar still exists and operates on Highway 51, as known as the Howling Dog Saloon. But within that time, there are a lot of great stories. The sawmill that he built was quite legendary in the area. He also created that pavilion in 1924 and advertised it all over the region, particularly in the UP around Ironwood and other areas. And he would bring in bands from all over the Midwest, African-American bands playing jazz, white bands, Native Americans, which he was very close to from his affiliation with many of the tribal members in Lac du Flambeau, conducted huge powwows there. They did most of this all during Prohibition. And so he had his own brew, as a family member said in an interview, and also moonshined and sold those contrabands to a very welcoming customer base. There's a lot of Northwoods lore that focuses on making ice, and not just in the Northwoods, all over Wisconsin. You see teams of men going out in lakes, cutting big blocks of ice, and then moving them to rail cars. Loveless thought that was rather silly. And for his own personal consumption, not that a kind of industrial use, he created an ice house and put a pump on it. And every day during the winter, he would add water to the ice house and would build a very clean, pure blue set of ice blocks within his ice house. And as he operated, as I said, 3 different taverns over the course of his life, his daughters shared with us in their earlier interviews that he would walk out of the bar with a chisel and a pail, and he could strike that chisel with a mallet on that ice block, and a perfect piece of ice would fall into the bucket, and he would use that to serve his customers.
Thank you so much, Jim Bokern, for joining us today and telling us about a local legend up in Manitowish Waters, Robert Loveless. Thank you, and have a good rest of your day.
But take care.